Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to Campus Consortium Foundation's webinar on how Trinity University and Morehouse College navigate their cyber threats. If you have any questions now or during today's presentation, please type them into the chat box or questions pane in the Zoom control panel. And now we'll begin our webinar for the day. Hello, my name is Carl, President of Campus Consortium Foundation, and a warm welcome to all our attendees today. I would like to give a shout out to some of our schools. We have a good turnout from community colleges, Chattanooga State, Meridian, and CT State. We also have our friends from Alabama A&M University. We have California State University, Sacramento, Platt College. We also have United States Air Force Academy. Welcome to the CIO from there. Thank you for attending today. We also have University of Kansas and University of Arkansas schools, as well as several others, such as University of Hartford and Irvine Valley College. So again, thank you for everyone for attending today, and we'll get right to our presentation. I'd like to start with just some information about Campus Consortium Foundation. Campus Consortium Foundation's mission is to advance education by supporting educational institutions, and we can help with program services and partner relationships with vendors and partners who are dedicated to higher education. And for all the attendees today, Oculus IT is offering for Campus Consortium webinar attendees complimentary benefits, such as a penetration test for your institution that is required due to compliance and audit requirements. And they are also offering a virtual CISO service and a 24/7 security operations center at reduced pricing for our webinar attendees. And if one of these is purchased, then the institution will also get a free GLBA compliance assessment. So to redeem these offers, please contact Jennifer Brown, who's our membership coordinator, and her information is on this slide, or you can just email info@campusconsortium.org. Well, today's panelists are Dr. Kimberly Jones and Brian Cornell. And what we're going to be doing throughout the presentation is polling the audience. We would appreciate it if you could respond to these poll questions. They should be pretty quick, about 30 seconds to answer. The results will be on the screen immediately as soon as the poll closes. And we will provide all this information from the attendees in the follow-up email from this webinar. The first poll question is, how confident are you about your institution's ability to proactively detect and respond to cybersecurity threats? Highly confident, somewhat confident, or not confident? If you would just take the next few seconds to answer this question, and we'll close the poll and see what everybody says. We'll have a few more poll questions as we move on. Here's the results, and looks like over 50% of our attendees today who responded to this question are highly confident. Some are somewhat confident, and those institutions are likely working on becoming compliant, especially with the latest FASFA and GLBA requirements. And everybody has that single annual audit. So thank you for taking the time to answer that question. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Kimberly Jones, who is the Vice President of IT Services and Chief Information Officer at Morehouse College. Dr. Jones, I'd like to hand it over to you, please.
Thank you, Carl. Good afternoon, everyone. We will jump right into it. So as mentioned, I am Vice President and CIO of Morehouse College. You can go to the next slide for me. Here it is. And if you're not familiar with Morehouse College, we are located in Atlanta, Georgia. We've been around for over 150 years. We are a historically Black university, a college, I'm sorry. And we serve all men. We're an all men college. And we are a part of the Atlanta Consortium here, the Consortium Center, where there are other schools, and I would name them: Spelman, Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse School of Medicine, which is separate from Morehouse, and we are all a part of Consortium. And if you have not visited, we are right here together. We are, sharing some green space, some of us. So when I say we're in walking distance, we are really walking distance. All the colleges are located right there together. I'm not going to continue talking about all the good things we do at Morehouse, how, in 2022, we were, #1 producer of Black men who go to earn their doctorate degrees as stated by the National Science Foundation. And of course, there's more. But as I stated, I want to get right into the security and some of our challenges and our objectives. So I've been here at Morehouse for about 6 years now. I think I've stopped counting. But as you walk into any new organization or, higher ed, at least my first priority is around the security. Trying to understand where we are, what it's going to take to increase our security posture. So one of our objectives were to invest in a security approach. Well, the challenge was that we were a small team, smaller than we are now, probably 10 or less at that time. And we needed more staff, but we also needed staffing around security. And, I could have gone and say, hey, I need about 10 people, 10 to 15 people, just for security alone. Not to mention the needs around other staffing in other areas of IT. Well, the bottom line was at the time, there was not enough resources or funding just to pour it all into IT. Even if there were, if I was given, just a jackpot of money to say hire who you want to, for me, time was of the essence. Meaning that, we had an assessment done, a couple of assessments around security, and that's good, but once you have the assessment, what are you going to do with it? How do we start remediating? And I see that some of you answered that you're highly confident that you can, detect and respond to incidents that may occur. And we were too, until it was time to start doing them, right? So that is part of how we ended up with the managed SOC as well as virtual CISO, because not only did I want the items that we needed to remediate fixed, we wanted them fixed fast. And I think most of you may be from higher ed, and if you are, you know that regardless of what you're dedicated to, what role you have in your area, if you're short of staff, you may be called off to do other things. When you're hiring, it takes a lot of time to hire. And that brings me to the next slide, which is the org chart. As I mentioned in the beginning, we started off about 10 people. And now today, we are probably close to 30 IT people or employees, but that does not include the org chart that you are looking at here today. So if we included the org chart, that increased those numbers even more. The good thing about this org chart, as you can see, and I won't read off every title here, But as you can see, as I mentioned, we have the CISO. That's important and required probably for most of you. We have hackers, ethical hackers, technical report writers, customer success manager, and a whole lot more to add to that org chart. So now when there's time for audit and they ask for our org chart, we apply the college org chart for IT, but also we attach this org chart that shows how we're staffed when it comes to security. We have these dedicated people for security on our team. Okay, so that was one of the benefits of establishing a SOC. Not to mention, it would take us a lot of resources to hire for a SOC, and especially a 24/7 SOC. So, which is a benefit of having a SOC service is 24/7. We start worrying about, we're on holiday break. Do you stop working? Of course not. But at the same time, we know it was too much of a risk to rely on just the people that we had that was not necessarily security experts when it comes to security. So if we are on holiday break, we feel a little bit more assured that someone is, watching and monitoring 24/7. And, if it is really an emergency, they have our contact information to say, hey, we need to get on it right now. That way, myself nor the, director of our network and infrastructure is not losing as much sleep wondering, what's going on while we're on holiday break or while we're working on other things. We're able to have a dashboard that we can look on when we have questions. As I mentioned about the monitoring, the support desk, firewall management. If you noticed in the beginning, I mentioned about we had the assessment done. And depending on how much you have to remediate or to correct, it may be a little, it may be a lot to some of you. And that is why we hired Oculus IT to help remediate those things instead of giving it to a couple people who their role is not solely security. Doesn't mean they can't do it. As I mentioned, time is of the essence. You don't put security on hold, right? So we hired Oculus not only to monitor for us, but to assist with the remediation as well. You get the best in class incidents response. It literally, once the contract and everything was deployed, we pretty much was up and running in a short period of time. Oculus was getting used to our environment, learning things every day. We meet weekly with the CISO, but not only with the CISO, the network team also meet with the SOC to go over things as well. So there's improved security all around just by having a SOC and a virtual CISO. I don't know if we would have been able to hire enough people because of budgets just to manage a SOC on our own, especially if you're talking about 24/7. Most of the time we're thinking about the 9 to 5, but we forget security needs to be monitored around the clock. Okay. So just to give you a look into what it is that we have at Morehouse as some of our priorities, and one you will see here is security awareness training. This is a big one where people oftentimes don't think about how important it is to have security training. Now, the reason being, I'm not going to remember the statistics, but I do recall that most of incidents or breaches that happen is because of something that your user have done that they shouldn't have and things of that nature. Whereas if they had training, they may not have, done those things. With our CISO, we worked on our NIST. We continue to work on our NIST 800-171. This is the goal of ours, and it may be a goal of some of you all if you receive certain type of funding, or federal funding, or it may just be a standard that you're trying to set for yourself. in my eyes, is never enough to settle for the minimal when it comes to security. So we want to reach a higher standard of improving our security. GLBA compliance, probably necessary for most of you receiving federal funding, management of our data, and just alone our CISO is helping us with something I don't think we could, manage too well on our own, is vendor management. We forget that the vendors that we use every day is a part of security. So our CISO, based on the vendors that we send him that we're using and the priorities and the information we have in systems of vendors, but our CISO is vetting each and every vendor that is sent and documenting it. And we will review from year to year and update. And so once again, when we are applying for cyber insurance or doing audits, we have all the documentation to say, hey, we are trying our best to stay up on security. I mentioned incident response. Another one is the IT security tabletop exercises. We don't have to, come up with those exercises ourselves. Our CISO is quite present with our campus security or campus police, as well as IT, when we are doing the tabletop exercises. It feels good to have that expertise in the room for those that are not in IT, and our CISO could speak to some of their questions as well. And there's just so much that we've been working on. These are just a few things. Email phishing. This alone, hiring our CISO, our virtual CISO, took so much off of my plate coming in, as I mentioned, 6 years ago. And I felt like I was hired as a CISO coming in versus just the CIO. Although, I'm responsible for both. But as I mentioned, I could not give the time and commitment it takes to commit to security. I could not give enough time and to be the CIO as well. Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
So I am done, but I will be here if you have questions, and Carl is going to send out our next poll.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. That was a great story, and I understand what you're saying about the limitation of staffing and expertise. And at Campus Consortium Foundation, we talk to so many schools with similar issues, and they're trying to overcome them. The old way of trying to support everything yourself in-house or on campus is just not sustainable anymore. So it looks like you've been able to optimize your investments to get the expertise that you need and the protection and compliance that's required. So thank you for that story. I would like to move to the next poll question. Does your organization have an individual responsible for information technology security, compliance, and financial controls? Yes, no, or not really. And this poll question speaks to the type of employees and expertise that you do have or don't have on campus. And the poll results show that, yeah, it looks like all the respondents have someone who's responsible for this. And that number has been growing among a lot of our member institutions. And it's essential today, and it's required. You really cannot operate an institution without this expertise. But along with this expertise is, as Dr. Jones mentioned, the testing, the assessments, the hardening of your systems. I'd like to move to just one more poll questions before we get to our next panelist. And this question is about, are your institution's network, data center, and computers monitored and protected from cyber threats and suspicious activity 24/7? And again, this goes back to what Dr. Jones was discussing regarding that we focus mostly on student, faculty, and staff support during the day, during the business day. And as online learning and services that's extended into after business hours, and students want to submit assignments or communicate at 2 o'clock in the morning or on the weekends, we do need to be monitoring our systems and our data. And that protection provides a team that will make sure that your data is protected, that the access to sensitive information is monitored. And if there is an issue, then someone from that security operations center will alert somebody or mitigate the issue. And so again, the results from these poll questions are yes, everybody is doing some sort of monitoring of their systems and infrastructure. And that's so very important to do. And if institutions aren't doing that, we encourage them to look for solutions. We help them find solutions that they can tolerate in their institution financially, and also something that will bring them up and beyond the level of protection that they need as a higher education institution. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Brian Cornell. Brian is a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer for Oculus IT, and he serves Morehouse College and Trinity University. Brian, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Campus Consortium, and thank you, Dr. Jones. It's been a pleasure working with all of you these last couple years. So yeah, I felt like somebody was talking about me earlier when Dr. Jones was saying the CISO does this, the CISO helps us with this. Morehouse College is a fantastic institution, and it's been a great pleasure working with Dr. Jones and her team. Her team is fabulous. Just a little bit about me. I've been in my career has spanned over 20 years, predominantly higher education. I've served as CIO and CISO. Similar to Dr. Jones, how she said she didn't have the time to spend on security, even though she felt like she was the CISO as well. I always had more of a passion for security, and I always felt I never had enough time to spend on the security side of the house while trying to manage IT operations on a day-to-day basis. So, I did make a move, and I joined Oculus IT, and I am a virtual CISO. And both Trinity University, who I'm going to introduce and talk about, and Morehouse College are great partners. It makes it easy when you have teams that are highly committed and highly dedicated to improving their security posture. It doesn't remove all the work and effort that has to happen. It just makes it that much more uh, favorable and pleasant because you have people that share common goals and time. And again, I've truly enjoyed my time working with them. Trinity University. If you don't know much about Trinity, Trinity was founded in 1869, and it's continually ranked amongst one of the top liberal arts schools in the country. And this is a great stat. When I found this, I kind of laughed to myself. When it was founded, it only had 5 faculty members and 7 students. And that's a great faculty to student ratio. However, things change, and they definitely have changed. And, even though they're now the home of the Tigers and located in beautiful San Antonio, Texas, today they've grown to an active student body of over 2,500 students. If you have not visited San Antonio, I was there last month. It's a beautiful, beautiful city, and the campus is just as beautiful. I highly recommend it. Throughout Trinity's history, they started off being dedicated to academic rigor, and they remain so today. But they are also dedicated to the safety of their campus community, and this includes information security. As time went on and laws and regulations changed and they started affecting higher education, a lot of people realized they had to do more than what they were currently doing. They face challenges just like many others in managing these cybersecurity threats effectively. they realized they needed assistance. They needed help. They didn't have the resources to tackle all these cyber needs and requirements. And the change in laws and regulations and all the mandates that blanket higher ed, it makes it difficult. And these requirements and this pressure grows every single day, whether it's from one of the change in laws or whether it's from your cybersecurity insurance provider who's asking more detailed and security specific questions of you. And how you answer and what your posture of your security environment is could mean you don't get coverage or you get a reduced coverage amount. And cybersecurity insurance is definitely needed. And these companies, they remain a critical partner in combating security threats. So Trinity realized this, and they went looking for a viable solution, and the search began. How can we effectively handle what we need to do facing all these objectives? Well, they decided to partner with Oculus IT. And Oculus IT is a managed security service provider. We offer a number of different services to the higher ed industry, and we only serve higher ed. But they found us, and we are very fortunate they had, because we've had a multi-year relationship. And together we've made great strides and great improvements in their security posture. In this partnership that we had, very proud of it, but it wasn't an acquisition of a service, but it was an extension of their team. The current partnership includes a 24/7 security operations center, a wide array of security assessments and compliance assistance needs, and my favorite part, virtual CISO expertise. And together that makes up our team now. And again, a lot of schools, they just don't have the resources, the budget, or the teams to tackle the cybersecurity challenges of the 21st century. So a partnership is definitely needed. Assistance is always welcome. And together, we're able to meet our objectives and goals a lot more easily than, if we were acting alone. So why was Oculus IT SOC as a service? Why was that a great solution for Trinity University? So a SOC as a service includes a SIM tool. And in today's world, we know 24/7 monitoring is very, very critical to a sound security program. These bad threat actors, these malicious people located around the world, they don't sleep, you know, and but we sleep, and higher ed is always being targeted. It's continuous, it's nonstop, it's relentless. And you may not have known this, but higher ed remains a favorite target of these attackers. And I'll get into that a little later. So the SOC services provided Trinity with improved incident response and increased threat detection and prevention. It operates 24/7 by 365, around the clock. It operates out of multiple locations, and it gives that coverage. It gives the monitoring of the environment the attention that it needs. Doing this in-house, many people try, many people are able to do it, but it's very difficult. The internal teams, they have vacations, they're in meetings, they need to sleep. As management, we do need to give them some time off every once in a while. So when you partner with somebody, you'll get that coverage that you need. The Oculus IT SIM ingests your entire environment to give you a comprehensive view of what's going on in the environment. And at the forefront of that are all the security analysts, the forensics teams, all the people that work around the clock to watch what's happening. It's a customized solution that serves the needs of colleges and universities, because in this industry we do have unique challenges, and that's different than many other industries. In the SOC services also brought on penetration testing, vulnerability scans, and server hardening assessments, which is equally important. The day that our partnership was made was the day that the Trinity University security team increased to include many, many other security experts and cyber resources. Again, it's an extension of the team. We are partners. We are shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, side by side with Trinity University. Their failures are our failures. Their successes are our successes. We are there when each other need one another, and we actively engage and collaborate with every team member that we have. So whether it be those security analysts, the people responsible for watching the screen, cloud engineers, network architectures, systems admins, Linux, Windows, this is making up our entire security operations center. And they're at the disposal of the Trinity IT department whenever needed. We're always tapping into different knowledge sets and skills as needed, because you never know what challenge is going to hit you down the road. Each of the partnerships, they come with a named service delivery manager. That's an IT project manager, and they're great to have. A lot of people don't have any of those that are dedicated, but they make any kind of project or initiative run a lot smoother and easier. And each partnership comes with a customer success manager. Think of, quality control. We always want to keep improving. We always want to be doing better, and having a feedback channel that's dedicated to your success is extremely important. In Oculus IT, I'm just one of the CISOs. We have a pool of CISOs, and we work hand in hand. We almost have like a small little consortium of CISOs, and we share knowledge and information. And if I notice something that's happening in higher ed, cybersecurity wise on the West Coast, I share that so that we can equally protect those on the East Coast and across the board. And that makes it, this is the extended team that Trinity University got in the partnership. Now, what I do specifically, and again, this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some of the highlights of things that I've partnered and worked with the Trinity University team on, whether it be developing strategies and roadmaps. Dr. Jones talked about the vendor management program and assist in that. And I'm going to talk a little more about that here soon. One of my most favorite things about Trinity is that I was invited, and I proudly serve on their security governance committee. And there, what great support by their leadership to move forward with different security changes and initiatives. Another area that takes a lot of time, but we have to do, is on the compliance and regulatory side of the house. All the audits and assessments that happened. GLBA had new laws take effect just a year ago, and a lot of campuses were scrambling. And it's not that most people, even if they have dedicated security teams, some people may not know how to do it. Others are just looking for an extra hand who can come in and give us different creative approaches to tackling these cyber challenges, who can actually be the point person in improving our GLBA posture, who could run a NIST self-assessment to get us ready for the upcoming state NIST assessment that's taking place, in the next few months, who has the expertise and time to look at all our various safeguards for security, those being physical, administrative, and technical. And backtrack in a second. Security is great. It's common sense. However, we also have an institutional obligation to protect our customer information and data. And that's our entire campus community. And what makes it complex and challenging is it consists of alumni, parents, guests, faculty, part-time employees, sometimes union employees. You have students, and the campus community just has different unique needs than many other industries, even though we do share commonalities with other industries, but we do have a complex campus. So a lot of time is spent on the compliance and regulatory side of the house. And as the next slide will show you, we list some of these for you, and these should be very, very familiar to you as well. There's security frameworks that is highly recommended to adopt if you haven't done that already, whether it be NIST and CMMC, the CIS controls, ISO, those are always good to follow. They've been made by industry leading security experts, kind of as a template. Again, talking about the cybersecurity insurance companies, you're trying to get insurance, you're trying to get renewed. It used to be, do you have security awareness training? Check the box. And yes, we do. Now, these companies are asking for evidence. How many hours and minutes of training has each employee at your campus taken? And what are the topics of the security training? They're asking evidence. Do you have onboarding training for new hires? Are you doing targeted training, based upon the risks that are unique to your institution? For example, those in the business offices at a campus, they deal a lot with payments and things, so they're susceptible to fraud. Those employees should be having additional fraud training, maybe even quarterly, and the CISO, can help that. In some of my partner schools, I actually run the security awareness training program for them, as well as writing policies, revising policies, going to different committees like the governance committee. In another campus, I hold regular virtual webinars for the entire campus so we can get together and talk about security and what's important to them. One major accomplishment, if you're familiar with PCI, depending on what level of PCI compliance or where you are, you you know Trinity University was facing a SAQD. And what that is a renewal questionnaire that required hundreds of very complex and complicated questions that had to be revisited and re-answered on an annual basis. It also required some very high-level complex networking changes, and whether it be to segmentation changes to the architect, and together with the team, we were able to come up with some strategies that effectively reduce that requirement down to an SAQB. So now on an annual basis, we only have, a couple dozen questions to recertify to. So those are some of the strategies that we work together, to, hey, if we don't have to spend so much time on becoming PCI compliant or remaining compliant, let's focus on other things, which I'm going to show you here soon on where Trinity is today. And then real fast on service provider oversight, this is an element of the GLBA. It's one of the main elements. Dr. Jones talked about it. Part of security is also understanding the vendors, the service providers, the contractors that you are dealing with, whether it be Microsoft as a vendor, or whether it be a third-party consultant that you rely on for database programming. Each of these vendors have to be they have to be reviewed prior to being onboarded. Due diligence must happen to select and retain service providers that are capable of maintaining appropriate safeguards. It's a requirement. And any audit is going to ask how you're doing that and ask for evidence. But nobody has the time to read through HECVAT reports, SOC reports. Who has the time to review the ISO certifications, any VPAP, any policies? Who has the time to research on the web about the security posture of these companies, and have they had any recent attacks? Were they in the news? And as CISO, I lend a hand to both Morehouse and Trinity as far as doing this for them, just so they have time to focus on other things. So where we are today, of course, a lot of the things I mentioned are still moving forward, but we've decided to take a different approach at Trinity. Before it was a question of, if we get hit with a cyber attack, how are we going to handle that? We've gone 360. We are realistic, and we are taking the approach that when we get hit, then what's going to happen? So believing you're going to have a data breach or a cyber attack that hits you successfully, to me, is realistic. And to me, it's an approach, it's a scenario that you have to be prepared for. So why not start preparing for it now? So Trinity's decided with their leadership to enact a CEP. and that's their cybersecurity enhancement program. And it's a multi-pronged approach to combating security, not just in one area or one focus, but across the board. So there's a data leakage project, there's an intrusion prevention project, an IAM, identity access and management project, and then the data management project, which I'm the project manager for. And the idea here is a hacker wants your data. That's why they're getting in. Yeah, they can create a nuisance for you and maybe disrupt services. So your Wi-Fi is not working for a weekend, or maybe printing across campus is disrupted for a couple days. Well, that's not what we're really concerned with security necessarily. We have the obligation to protect data. So at campuses, due to academic freedom, the evolution of academia, the sharing of information, whether it be research or just out of goodwill and in stewardship with one another, that our data is everywhere and it's old and we don't have eyes into it, nor we don't know what it is. However, if a hacker gets in and exfiltrates such data, you could have a major data breach on your hand. So Trinity's approach in this side of the data management project is, let's inventory our data, let's understand it, let's clean it up. You don't need a spreadsheet that consist of employees, their names, dates of births, and social security numbers that worked at your institution 10 to 15 years ago. However, a hacker breaches you, they have access to that. Let's say that's a list of 500. That's 500 more pieces of private information that the hacker got. Let's find this old data, get rid of it. Let's find the data, understand, okay, there is a business need for it, and ensure that it's in a properly approved and secure location with rules around it. And that's their approach. So when they do get attacked, the number of data records that get into an unauthorized person's hands is minimal. So this is an exciting project that we're moving forward on. It just shows, security is evolving and our strategies and tactics have to remain evolving at a fast pace as well. Carl, Dr. Jones, thank you again. That concludes my part of the presentation, introducing Trinity. And I'll leave it with this. As you read through some of these, and I did say this a little earlier, higher ed remains a favorite. We weren't always a favorite, but they understand that our money is as good as anybody else's. Our data is just as valuable as a hospital's or a bank's. And ransomware is the D-Day for a cyber attack. And ransomware, what is alarming, is on the rise, and higher ed remains the industry that has the most growth for cyber attack. A year alone, last year, there were 200 additional reported ransomware attacks at higher ed colleges and universities. Now that's scary because an attack like this, it can ruin your reputation. You're in the newspaper. You could have prospective students leave and withdraw or go to a different school. You could have donors. Your donors could pull out. Hey, instead of giving it to Trinity University where I got my master's, I'm going to give my money to Morehouse because, Trinity can't handle my data appropriately. No, we don't want that to happen. So yeah, as you look at some of these statistics, this is real. And I highly recommend that you do whatever it takes to help you get into a position where at least you understand your risks and you're doing some kind of security initiatives and controls to do the best you can to protect your environment. So thank you again. I think Carl's muted. We were testing out our closed captioning capability of the presentation, and it's working, Carl.
Thank you. Brian, that was a great report. I would say 2 points that you brought up are important. And one is that you noted from the very beginning of your story about Trinity, the involvement of the highest level of leadership at the institution. That is so important for a successful IT security program. So many institutions don't have the top leadership involved as much as Morehouse and Trinity in their programs. And as a result, it's likely not as accepted in the entire institution where it needs to be, because everybody's dealing with technology for every business process, every communication, and for what institutions do is teaching and learning. So it is very critical that the highest level of leadership is aware of and ensures that, as Dr. Jones said, that they're just not adequate, that they're better than adequate. Because, as you mentioned, the threats continue to change. And the other item that you mentioned was the work around compliance and the support that you provide. And I would tend to think, is it possible that this is like a set it and forget it? You can rest confident that you've got a CISO, you have a system in operations, and as Dr. Jones said, she was doing every job in the house. Now she knows this is handled. Is this the same way it is at Trinity? Brian?
Yeah, the idea is that we want our IT departments in a perfect world, in a perfect setting, to focus on teaching and learning. That's where their efforts should be, right? Because that's why higher education exists. And there are many schools that the leadership does not support and engage with security, like Trinity University and Morehouse. Both of them are top notch with that, and starting with the CIOs, such as Dr. Jones and Ben Lim from Trinity. However, even higher up, the executives, the cabinet, the board, they have to be very, very supportive as well. Otherwise, we don't give up there, though. And this, Carl, we have to be then very creative with security. If you don't work for an institution that can help you push out, let's say, security awareness training, there's just no support to it. Hey, then start with your department. Start with your friend who works in athletics, get them on board. Do athletics. With security, one win is a win. Of course, we need to achieve compliance, but sometimes we are in difficult situations.
Thank you, Brian. We do have a couple questions from the audience. And one member asked, what is a HECVAT? You mentioned that in the compliance and regulation section, I believe, earlier, and there was a list of certain compliance requirements that I think you were saying that you used for vendor management.
Dr. Jones also put it out for you in chat there. Yeah, it's the Higher Education Community Vendor Assessment Toolkit. It comes from EDUCAUSE. You can find it. Most vendors that deal with higher ed have these because they know that we're going to ask. And so a lot of people have their own questions that they'll send over to the vendor, and it could take the vendor hours and hours to complete. So this is something that they do on their own. And they don't all have it, but this is just one tool. The SOC reports are security organizational controls. That's done by a third party. Just anything that we can do to help us believe that we are bringing in and partnering with a vendor who takes security seriously.
Great. It's good to have all those different assessments. And I have another question. This is for Dr. Jones, and it is around the staffing situation. So one person has asked, what if we don't have enough staff to work with the CISO or the SOC services that you have? Is that a challenge that you had to overcome, or how do you deal with that issue?
That was a challenge, as I mentioned several years ago. So that is a very good question. One of the things that we had to do was I had to become that person along with my director of network and infrastructure starting out. The most important thing was to have an assessment done and have the items or vulnerabilities rated from most critical to low, and present them to your leadership team and say, hey, if we don't get these things done, here's the risk that we are the things that may happen are the risks that we're going to incur. That is the first thing, is letting it be known that we have issues. We do not have either the expertise in-house or the time to give these things that are priority. Fortunately, our president, our leadership team, our board also have security at top of mind. So they made the commitment to make sure that we had the funding. Maybe we didn't get it the first year or as much as we wanted the first year. But then there became a time where it said, hey, we're going to dedicate this amount to IT to get these things in a better and improve security, in a better situation and improve security. And once you start, pitching even to maybe board members, there's donations there. And also, with the federal funding that we may receive, proposing things there and receiving money. But as mentioned, starting out, it had to be myself working with, the virtual CISO and our director of network and infrastructure, and we still do. As I mentioned, our team has grown, but we, myself as the CIO and director of network and infrastructure, would not like to have things happen that we could prevent on our watch. So we like to stay in the know. So we still work with Brian, although there may be others that could work with Brian or the SOC. But as I mentioned, the most important thing is having an assessment and bringing it to leadership's attention. I think everyone understands the importance of security, but they understand it better when you put it more in layman's term and you spell out what is wrong. Security is kind of one of those things that you fix on in the background, and sometimes you feel as if no one cares until there is a breach or incident. So you document and you bring it to attention, and not just bring it to attention, you also map out, here are some things that may happen or that have already happened because these things were not remediated or a priority. So that's kind of how we handled it at Morehouse. And we just make sure that security stays on top of everyone's mind.
Thank you for that. I would like to just take a moment for the very last poll question today, and that is, when was the last time your institution conducted an IT security incident response tabletop exercise? This is for our audience, and we'd appreciate it if you could just take a few seconds to answer that question. And it looks like we've got our results already. It looks like 60% of our respondents say that they had a tabletop exercise this year, and 20% said last year, and then 20% said never. I really appreciate the honesty around that. But the good thing is that we're creating awareness and we're all talking about it, and we can all share knowledge and information to help each other. And there are services provided by Oculus IT and that can help mitigate some of these issues and bring the compliance and also the protection that an institution needs. And I am just checking to see if there's any other questions. We can see the chat for the entire audience and the Q&A. So we've been monitoring that, and I think we've covered pretty much most of them. I know that we did have a question that was coming in from Richard Maxwell, the Chief Information Officer at Oakwood University. and just was trying to get the full details on that one. But what we're going to do is follow up with Mr. Maxwell to make sure that we answer his question. And if anyone in the audience would like to connect with Dr. Jones or Brian Cornell, Campus Consortium Foundation would be happy to make that connection. Just reach out to Jennifer Brown. I would like to remind you how we started, and that is that in appreciation for your attending this webinar, Oculus is providing a complimentary penetration test for your IT security infrastructure. And it is available right now, but it will not be available after June 15th. But they are doing this because of the Campus Consortium Foundation webinar. And we appreciate that. And we want to pass this on to our attendee educational institutions. Then there is also special pricing for some of the items and services that were discussed by Dr. Jones and Brian earlier in the presentation. There's the virtual CISO service and the 24/7 Security Operations Center, both with substantial discounts for institutions who have attended this webinar. If an institution chooses to engage with one of these reduced price services, then they will also receive a GLBA compliance assessment at no cost, in addition to the service that they acquire. So again, please contact Jennifer Brown at campusconsortium.org. The complimentary pen test expires June 15th, and the service pricing with the GLBA compliance assessment at no cost is June 15th also. So I am going to move ahead to say, I think we've answered all the questions, and I very much appreciate everyone who's attended today. We will be following up with this PowerPoint presentation deck and a link to the recording for all of you who have attended so you can review any information. And again, please contact us if you have any questions or want to follow up on some of Oculus IT's offers today. Thank you for attending. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to all our attendees who answered our poll questions too. We appreciate that.